Welcome to this Bee Shifter. John Vance, Josh Blum, and today a very special guest. We've got Battalion Chief Steve Lester of the Cobb County Fire Department, and he is going to be one of our presenters at the 2023 Hazard Zone Conference. And we also have featured Cobb County a lot in the past with some of the radio traffic that we feature from the Blue Card Department. Chief Lester, tell us a little bit about Cobb County, first of all, and how you operate there with your department.
Well, first off, John, let me just say thanks for having me on the podcast. This is a great opportunity to showcase what we're doing here in Cobb County and talk about what I'm going to be doing at the conference. Just to give you kind of a rundown of Cobb County Fire Department. We developed in 1971. Came together as several districts. That was previously volunteer, came together as a paid department in 1971. We currently have 29 stations servicing unincorporated Cobb County. We also work alongside 3 other city departments within our jurisdiction, where we have automatic and mutual aid agreements with. I think the last time we looked at the population was around 700,000, I believe, in the county. And we have about 700 employees currently operating in operations.
Well, how many fires are you guys going to on a regular basis?
It's pretty typical throughout the nation, about 80-20, I would say. 80% EMS and medical related, and 20% structural, or probably 80% or 20% structural fires.
Okay. Well, what we want to talk about today is command presence, command confidence, maybe a little bit of command confidence. And these might be some of the things you're talking about at the Hazard Zone Conference on October 5th and 6th. So give us a preview of what your class is going to be about before we get into our main topic.
Well, so my class that I'm presenting at the Hazard Conference is going to be basically a couple of case studies. I'll be looking at a successful rescue that we had back in August, I believe it was, of 2022. And then the other incident, which crazily enough occurred on the same property a year beforehand in November of 2021, where we had an apartment building that we had to make a strategic shift on. So we're going to be playing the audio from each one of those incidents, going to be breaking that down, looking at some division operations, looking at transfer of command, making that strategic shift, getting those people out and accounted for, things of that nature. So it should be a pretty good discussion.
Yeah, we look forward to it. It's going to be a great conference. If you have not registered already, bshifter.com. It is the place for incident commanders, fire service leaders. We'll recharge our batteries, get a lot of knowledge, have some good networking, and learn a lot over those 2 days in Cincinnati. So we are looking forward to that. So let's get into it. Command presence. Why is it important for us as the IC to have a presence on the fire ground?
Well, I think it's of the utmost importance. When you think about command presence in general, I think a good definition of that is probably really just the way that leaders present themselves to their people. When I think about command presence, I think back to the old John Wayne movies. When you see John Wayne, whatever character he was playing in those days, he always had command presence. Whether he was a Green Beret colonel, or if he was a marshal, or if he was commanding the cavalry, or whatever that looked like, he always was on the screen with command presence. Another person that I could relate to that would be Denzel Washington. You ever watch any Denzel Washington movies? No matter what character he's playing, he always presents himself with command presence. So basically, what we're looking at with command presence, in my personal interpretation of it, I break it down to kind of like the 3 C's of command presence, and that being competence, confidence, and control. You got to have all 3 of those things to have good command presence on the fire ground.
Well, let's start off with competence then. How do we become competent, first of all, as an IC? How do we develop it? How do we mentor that?
Well, with competence, first and foremost, you got to be good in the blue card world. That kind of what we would probably present that as is well rehearsed. In the communications piece of blue card, That's why we go through the certification module. That's why we do the sets and reps, good initial radio reports, good follow-up reports, making those assignments using task, location, and objective, making good command transfers, doing a strategic shift when you need to, being prepared to do that. That's the competence piece of it. And I think that's what's so important about the Blue Card program and that 40-hour online piece that we do, is that it drives those things into your brain and it forces out those bad habits that you may have had in the past, and makes you competent in the system. And I would say, that most incident commanders out there, if they're not practiced and they're not well rehearsed, then that competence piece just doesn't show through.
Aside from Blue Card, because it is an important tool in developing ICs, how else do we get the sets and reps for up and coming incident commanders?
Well, I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience, but it's just practice. It's kind of embarrassing to even say, but I mean, I've even, like, on my way to work in the morning, on the way to the station, sitting at a red light, pick out a building and just give an initial radio report, or practicing that command transfer. Maybe a lot of talking to yourself. I don't know. Maybe there's a mental health aspect there. I don't know, but you've got to practice. And like we were talking about with the 80-20, I mean, we're just not going to fires like we were 20 and 30 years ago. So we have to have that training piece in place, because we're just not getting the sets and reps and the practice by going to incidents.
Then when we start talking about command confidence, what does that look like, sound like, and what does it do for the fireground?
I think that's a twofold confidence. That's not only a confidence in yourself, and self-confidence as an IC, but you also got to have confidence in your people. I think confidence in yourself is probably the greater of the two. To have self-confidence as an IC, first and foremost, you got to have knowledge. That's learning the command system or the Blue Card method. You got to have practice. That we get that through running simulations, practicing drills, like we talked about on the way, looking at a structure, giving an instant radio report, things like that. And then there is that experience aspect of self-confidence. That's why we don't let 3-year firefighters test for battalion chief, because there is a series. It's a journey. You go from firefighter to driver to company officer to chief officer. There's a reason behind that, because we have to get that experience under our belt. In order to be self-confident as incident commander, I have to have been in that situation before in some shape, form, or fashion, and know, okay, I've been here, I know what this is like before, and I can work through it.
I don't want to ask you something about confidence just a little bit, because we've used some audio in the past, and it's going to come up. I think you're using it at the conference. I think it's the same incident where I think it was you were the incident commander and Alpha was assigned, and you were ready to make a strategic shift, and then that tactical boss said, "Command, if you just give us a second, I got these companies in place, and I think we might be able to get it, and I want to get it all clear." And you as the incident commander had no hesitation of, okay, we're going to go with that. And I think that's the piece of that relationship, not just with companies, but with all of your colleagues and everybody that you work with on, okay, well, this is a team effort. We're all in this together, right? So I think that confidence thing that you had in that person is because you had in your mindset of, okay, they're competent. I put them into a place to make decisions. They're there to help me, right? And you had confidence in making that decision. Then, okay, well, I'm going to give you a little bit then, because you had, that person a little bit closer that could feel it, taste it, touch it as a tactical boss, like we talked about, that was maybe in a little better position than you were to say, okay, well, I'll give you a little bit. It wasn't necessarily a company saying that. It was somebody else that their skill set. You've probably worked with them before. You know where they've been, what they've done, right? So, I mean, I think that's a huge part of this whole, confidence thing. I compare it so many times to, if you got a quarterback that'll stand in the pocket, they got some confidence in that line is not going to let nobody get to him, right? Well, the incident commander is protected by the company officers, everybody on the fire ground, the other people who they put in support positions. In your guys' case, that person who drives you around or you drive them around, whichever way that works in your system. But that you have that, support piece to help us with that, confidence level that we can kind of do more and take on more because we've built this team and this system to manage it, to manage the event.
Yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that's Battalion Chief Kevin Lewis that you hear in that audio, who's also he's pretty well known in the world of search. Him and Captain Sean Gray do a lot of teaching all over the country. They've taught at Firehouse, FDIC, things like that. So, I have extreme confidence in him. He and I have worked together for 25 plus years. I have served as his division supervisor, and he's served as my division supervisor in the past. We've worked very well together over the years. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there is that piece there. He's seeing something that I'm not seeing because I'm sitting in the command post. He has a different angle, and I have to go with that. But I will say to the contrary. I mean, there is a time when you have to make that judgment call and say, hey, we've done enough, and it's time to pull the plug, so to speak. But yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And that's why I think it's so important too, that we assign that division supervisor is a battalion chief rank. Because I know some jurisdictions may play that down to the company officer level. And I mean, you do what you got to do given your resources. But I think having that chief officer in that role with that level of experience and knowledge and expertise really helps that incident commander drive that incident action plan.
And what's the third C that we're talking about?
The third C is control. And that is there again, I kind of divide that up into self-control and control of the situation. Really, control is just the power of influence or being able to direct someone's behavior. Self-control, that's of course is the biggest piece of that. You've got to be able to process the stress, and be able to deal with that sympathetic nervous system response that you get from, oh boy, I'm in charge and it's on me now. The buck stops here. You've got to be able to control that surge and be able to function. I think there's a lot of different methods that you can use with that. I personally, I like to use cardiovascular conditioning. I know I've read studies where it says that if you're in good cardiovascular health, it's easier for you to deal with that sympathetic response, and your body is used to that. You're used to that increased heart rate, that increased breathing, so your body can control that better. I try my very best to do a minimum of 30 minutes of cardiovascular conditioning every morning when I get to work. That's part of my daily routine. The guys at the firehouse know that Chief is in the gym from 6 a.m. to 6:30 every morning. If you want to find me, that's where I'm at. I'm on the treadmill or the Stairmaster. And so I try to stay in good cardiovascular conditioning for that reason. Not only that, but that to me, that also is a good role model for them, or it gives them a good example so that they can do the same. The other part of the control aspect is getting control of the situation. You got to be the one that comes in and gets control. I mean, you got to be able to be able to take the reins and be able to start from scratch if you need to. I mean, if those initial actions haven't been done, that initial raid report, that walk around, you may get there and none of that's been done. You have to start from scratch. You may be the first one to get there as the strategic incident commander, and you have to start from scratch. You may get there and things are going bad, and you may have to call an audible, right in the middle of the incident. You've got to be able to take control of that and do it. I think on one of your previous podcasts, I remember Nick talking about when he was shift commander, pulling up and seeing, hey, this is not going well, and just, hey, I'm taking it and we're going defensive. Boom, strategic shift right off the get-go. As soon as he cues up the mic, you may have to do that. You got to be able to take control of that. In the one of the examples in my class where we talk about the successful rescue, I pulled up on the scene as the strategic incident commander. I think I was third due. There was 2 engines on the scene at the time. They were all hands rescue. I had one crew that were all in on rescue. The other crew was stretching a line for fire control. I knew they were task saturated. I could see the building. I knew what was going on. I knew the incident action plan. I did not take the time to do a command transfer. I took it and I went with it. And that's part of getting control of the situation, is you have to be able to do that in a moment's notice.
What happens when we don't? I think the three of us have been in systems or with ICs that don't have these three C's. And we know the kind of angst and anxiety that creates on the fireground. What else happens if we're not following?
Well, bad things could happen. If you don't have command and control, then it's just nothing but freelancing at that point. Guys, I mean, firefighters are going to do what they got to do to get the job done. And if we don't control them on the fireground, they're going to do whatever it takes. And we're going to lose command and lose accountability. And when that happens, bad things result.
Does the confidence, and control, do you feel like those build on each other? Like you really can't get to control if you don't have the other two. And I don't know that you can get to being confident if you're not competent. And if you are confident and you're not competent, that's very dangerous, right? Yeah. So, I mean, how do you think those three really connect?
Well, I think you're exactly right there, Josh. I think, you have to start with the competence piece, and the competence piece is going through the program, getting certified, continuing the steps and reps. And let me just say too, competence is that's a two-dimensional thing. You not only do you as an incident commander have to be competent, but you have to know that your people are competent. And the only way you can do that is through drilling. I tell my folks all the time, there's training and then there's drilling. Training is, hey, we're all getting together. We're going to sit down and we're going to go over and we're going to practice. We're going to learn a new skill, or we're going to practice some previous skills to reinforce. Drilling is we're all going down to the training tower. We're going to put some bubblegum smoke in the building. I'm going to give you a scenario, and 3, 2, 1, go. That's a drill. And I think the only way you truly know as an incident commander that your people are competent to do the job is through drilling. I make a point to do a minimum of 2 drills in my battalion a year, where we go down, the guys come in blind. I don't tell them anything about the scenario, and it's 3, 2, 1, go. And we go from there.
Yeah, and that's awesome, right? The place to find out some places where you might need to train or do better, or to identify, hey, if I have a specific thing, this person or this group's going to be better for that, is definitely in the controlled environment, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The place to try to figure it out isn't when something has gone bad. We talk about that with air management. Like when your bell's ringing and shit goes sideways, it's too late. So, I mean, what you're doing with that drill thing is, that's awesome, because you're figuring out as the IC, what is my real capability? I mean, you're running the full scale exercise before the bell rings.
Well, you take a task, a fireground task like vertical ventilation. Not everyone in your battalion or your organization, for that matter, is going to be competent at vertical ventilation. You need I had a really good mentor of mine, Battalion Chief John Caniff. He retired last year. His adage when it came to vertical ventilation was you got to have 3 things in order for ventilation to go correctly. You got to have the right building, you got to have the right fire, but most importantly, you got to have the right crew. You got to have a crew that is trained and versed on that procedure and knows what they're doing, who has been on roofs before, who has made those cuts and can get the job done. That's a great
adage, because it forces you down that path. Well, his whole mindset was decision making, right? Like, exactly. It starts with what is really going on here and what do we need to do, and is this going to benefit or not? I mean, that's awesome. And so to talk about the rescue thing, the confidence in the rescue thing, it blows me away. I think I've heard it twice now, or I believe on a couple different incidents, where the search crew, finds somebody, gives a good can report, and includes, hey, we're going to need a cyano kit on the alpha side. That didn't happen because you trained on it. Right. That happened because you trained on it. And that happened probably because, maybe it came out in a drill, like, hey, we need to know. Right. But the need, it's a need. Right. So you can tell the difference between people who say, oh, yeah, we do all of these things, and then the people who say they do it, but they really do it. Because when somebody finds somebody and they got the scream going, and it's like, what are they saying, and where are they going, and what are they doing? Right. Versus who engine 741 to command. Priority traffic, we found a victim. We're coming out the alpha side. We're going to need the cyano kit, and the search isn't complete. It's like, they've talked about that. They've trained on that before. Those people were confident, competent. right? And maintain control of themselves, which just puts you in a better position, to keep managing the event and to manage, that specific problem that they identified that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in our organization. We have the funding available to be able to purchase those kits. I think the last time I heard from our EMS chief, those things were about $600 a piece. And we had an incident just a few weeks ago where we used 4 of them on one incident. We have a specialized unit within our department, our medical operations team, that respond when we balance the alarm on any structure fire. They automatically get dispatched. They come to the scene. They're transport capable, which we do not transport as an agency, but they are a transport capable unit. But they come with multiple cyano kits. They come with the ability for airway control, all that kind of stuff. And I preach in my battalion constantly about the formation of medical group. When we get that first due ALS unit, if they're not first due, if they're not actually helping stretch a line, or if they're not actually searching, they're going to be on the alpha side most likely as medical group. I'm a huge advocate of medical group, and I tell my guys, we can make the sexiest grabs ever on the fireground and come out and high five, but if we can't take care of them when they hit the front yard, then what we've done is for nothing. And we have to be able to provide that life supportive care, emergency medical care that it takes, and get them to the appropriate facility.
A number of years ago, a large urban department that did not do EMS at the time would routinely drag their victims to the front yard and leave them there, and then go back in fighting fire without rendering aid at all. What's the whole point if we're going to drag somebody out and do this rescue if we don't set up the appropriate treatment and take care of them after we get them out of the fire? At that point, the building might be gone, but now life is still number one. So let's take care of those victims. I've heard that on your audio, and I just thought that was great because there was no question as to where that treatment was going to take place and where the medical aid was going to be needed and who was doing it. It wasn't leaving it up for debate or up for grabs, because then you end up with this freelancing situation. And I think for some of us that don't make those rescues on a regular basis, if you as the IC aren't defining who is going to take care of the patient, then everyone's going to take care of the patient. Kind of the opposite of that major urban fire department, where then suddenly you don't have anybody fighting the fire. So I think to have that very controlled plan when you bring somebody out is essential to not only taking care of that victim, but continuing to make sure that you're fighting the fire or completing your search or whatever else needs to be done on that scene.
Absolutely. And I just real quickly, I kind of dive into where that kind of came from for me. We had a fire several years ago where we had some helmet cam footage that made its way through the department, and the crew did a great job with the grab. I mean, they went in VES through a bedroom window, got this lady, took her down a ladder. It was a very successful grab in terms of search. But just like you said with that urban fire department, when she hit the ground, it was like, okay, we're done. And I thought to myself, why are we doing this? And then I go back to, my days as a firefighter or even a young company officer, where that's what we did when we went to the tower. We grabbed the dummy, we brought them down the ladder, and then we just dropped it and said, okay, we're done. And we either went to rehab or we went back in and finished the search or whatever. And it's that muscle memory over time that has developed that. So in seeing that, I decided then, we've got to make a change at least my battalion level. And so now when I drill, when they bring a victim out on one of my drills, they start compressions and they start medical care, and they don't stop until they're relieved. And so that there again, we're trying to retrain that muscle memory.
We saw the same thing happening when we were first got the flashover chamber. And inside the flashover chamber, you pencil, don't put the fire out all the way. Then we'd get to a regular fire, rocking and rolling, and people were penciling in hallways and just penciling in the room. It's like, why aren't you flowing water? Well, because the muscle memory, because that's what they did. So now there's a huge disclaimer when we go to those flashover chambers or other simulated fires, like, you got to put it out. You got to flow the water and put it out. And what we do on the training ground is what we're going to do on the fire ground.
Absolutely.
So building it is really good. So with these 3 C's, how much of that starts in the firehouse for you?
I think from a competency standpoint, that certainly can start in the firehouse, with training and drilling. Well, I mean, of course, it originally begins at the beginning of your career in the academy, and it builds from there. Confidence, comes. I think that comes from running calls more than anything, and training with your crew. Control is something that you have to develop personally.
The relationship that you have with your support officer and in Cobb County, are you running with somebody as your aide or your driver or a support officer, or are they in a separate vehicle? How do you operate that way?
Yeah, I have a chief's aide. Every battalion chief. We have 5 battalions within the county, and every battalion chief has an aide, a designated aide, and it's actually a requirement for us to keep that aide with us at all times. Like even when we're short staffed, our command staff would actually prefer us to shut down a unit versus for us to run by ourselves. They put that much emphasis on having that support officer in the vehicle with us.
That's fantastic, because a lot of times that's the hard sell, or you have to apologize almost for having that position. But we know that's a game changer. So working with that aide, how do you communicate with them? What's the expectations, and how do you develop them so they become your, for lack of the better word, apprentice?
Well, first off, let me just say, I talked to battalion chiefs in other jurisdictions and other departments, neighboring departments, and they're all jealous. They hate, I have to do this by myself, or I have to drive and worry about writing down what's going, writing down assignments and keeping track of what's going on and stuff like that. So, I just want to reemphasize how blessed we are to have those guys in the car with us. But mainly, what happens is, they're number one, first and foremost, they get us where we need to be. That frees me up, that I don't have to worry about emergency driving. My driver's taking care of that. I always pull up. We have our GIS system in the county. I don't know if you guys are familiar with GIS, but it's like a global information systems, I think is what it's known for. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a mapping system. Mm-hmm. So we use that. I take care. I tell my guys, hey, I'm going to pull up and tell you where your hydrants are. I don't want you guys to have to worry about that. I want you to, if you're first due, I want you to be worried about getting dressed and telling your crew what you're going to do and doing your size up, so I always pull up the hydrant information. I relay that to everybody that's coming into the scene. That frees me up to do that. It frees me up to keep track of what's going on with my command worksheet. En route to the call, I may be fielding some phone calls from superior officers. Who knows what's going on. But and then when we arrive on the scene, if I'm not comfortable with the follow-up report and the 360 is not what I think it was, or maybe something's changed and I need to get another 360, I can deploy that chief's aide, and I know that he can get that walk around in and come back and give me the information that I'm looking for. So there's that aspect. And then once they come back to the car, if they even leave the car, they're usually my accountability officer. That's our first level of accountability. We also run accountability at the division level. But for an overall strategic command, if that division supervisor is not deployed, then we run accountability at the command post. So they usually take charge of that. Also, all of our chief aides are also certified drone pilots. We have a drone program in the county, and so if we have, like I say, a big box, and I need to get an all four sides view or take a look at what's going on from an aerial perspective or something like that, the aide can deploy the drone and fly that, and so we can get eyes on that also.
Are you using them as an embedded safety officer if you're deployed to a division, if you're a later arriving chief?
Yes, that's correct. We also do that as well, and they maintain that accountability at the division level.
So when it comes to like lining up with the whole command presence, confidence, all of those things, how does like really knowing what's going on and what people are saying impact that? What it really comes down to, I mean, you just said something about the drone, right? I mean, if you get the drone in the air, that's another set of eyes, right? If you got a division boss forward, it's like, okay, I feel a little bit different maybe about that. Like they can see, some things differently. So we've all probably had that feeling like, what's really going on here? I'm trying to figure it out. It doesn't look like what I'm hearing, or it doesn't, something just doesn't line up. So how does that really impact the whole command presence thing? Like,
I think it boosts all three of the C's that we were just talking about. It increases your confidence because you've got a senior officer or a chief officer deployed forwardly as a division supervisor. It can increase your confidence by having that person deployed and know that person can get the job done. It also can increase your confidence by having a drone deployed so that you can keep a constant watch on what's going on all four sides of the building. Those things are amazing. They'll actually you can just hit a button and they'll fly a continuous 360 around the building for you so that you can get a continuous picture. It's unbelievable, the technology that we have now. I've just been told the other day we're going to be enhancing that program. Now we're going to get them with FLIR capabilities and all other kind of stuff. But it also, and more than anything, I would say, though, going back to the division supervisor piece, is that control. Having that guy or that chief officer there on that alpha side or Charlie side or whatever, controlling the flow of personnel as they're assigned in and out of that structure. That's huge. Even bigger when a mayday happens. And God forbid, the worst day of our careers, having that person standing at the door saying, "Hey, I'm the gatekeeper, and I've got this situation and I'm handling it." Man, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, you guys got a ton of really good things going on there. So I do want you to talk a little bit about changing gears slightly, what you guys are doing with your command training center and what's going on with that.
Well, yeah, we just completed the construction of our command lab, is what as we call it. There, it's at we actually remodeled our training center. We were sharing it with the PD for years, and they moved out and got their own training center. So we were able to renovate the entire building, and with that, we took the old tactical room where they used to it was covered in mats where they used to fight and tumble. We turned it into our command lab, and we actually took the front cab off of a reserve apparatus and mounted it inside the lab. So you start out when you're going through a scenario. If you're that initial company officer, you actually start out in the cab of the vehicle, and there's a big screen TV that you look through the windshield, and you give your initial radio report based on what you see on the screen. And then you get out and you walk around the room, and as you walk around the room, you're getting your 360 different sides of the building, and then you give your follow-up report. And then you can move to another location, and as units come in, they get assigned and they go to these little breakout rooms that they can sit in where everybody's quiet, and you can radio traffic's not bleeding over one another, and it's a great facility for that. It actually even has the capability too. We have a roll-up door in there where we can actually pull the battalion chief's vehicle inside the lab and run a scenario from the inside of the battalion chief's vehicle inside the lab itself. It's really awesome. I've got some good video footage that I shot of it that I'll be putting on display at my class at the conference, so everybody can see it.
That's awesome. I think so many of those things you identified there, that company officer actually being in the front seat of a fire truck and having the similar tools and being in that position, it's the training and context thing, right? So maybe initial IC certification, it maybe not be so important there when you're into that crawl phase, but when you're doing continuing education and continuing to grow the system and looking for that continuous improvement, when you can put people into the nearly to be in positions like they'd be in going to a fire, you in a battalion car with your aide, seeing a screen, using all the tools that you have. That's awesome. You guys are doing, great work with that.
Steve, is there anything else you want folks to know about the 3 C's or anything else that we missed while talking to you today?
I think it's important to talk about the two-dimensional aspects of all of these. And when I say two-dimensional, I mean, not only does the IC himself have to have competence, confidence, and control, but the people that you are leading, the people in your battalion, the people in your organization, they have to have competence. They have to know the system just as well as you do. They have to have confidence in themselves that they can do the job. They also have to have confidence in you as their leader, as their incident commander, that you're going to be able to get on scene and get it sorted out and get it done. And they also have to have they have to know that you're going to get control. I think that's the big point there. But it's a two-way street. Not only is it the IC or that chief officer that has to have those three qualities, but I think the people that you lead have to possess those as well.
I want to hit on something on that. How do you feel about the whole? So we always talk about active listening, right? The strategic IC has to be doing active listening. So what does it do to your companies, or what kind of feedback do you get from people, or what do you? I mean, you might not get any feedback from them if cause I know you do a great job, but if you don't answer them, or you constantly have to say unit with traffic, what do you think that does to their mindset about you?
Wow, that's a good question. I know that you in the audio that you'll hear at the conference, from the successful rescue, there's one officer in particular. He's a great officer. He makes good decisions, but he oftentimes he gets a little hyped up. He talks a little fast on the radio, and I think there's even one point in the audio where you'll hear me say, "Command to that unit, slow down, say it again," because you can't understand him. I think active listening is it's paramount for a strategic incident commander. It's very difficult for an initial incident commander to have that capability because he's actually on the line, he's interior, he's doing the work. But I think for a strategic incident commander, it's absolutely essential. I know one thing I have, and anybody that works in my battalion would tell you this, is that Chief don't want you coming to the car. Because everybody wants to come to the car. And that's kind of where if you've seen my video advertisement for the conference, that's kind of where that came from, is everybody wants to come to the car and chit chat with the chief. And that's mine like number one rule on the scene: do not come to the car. And that's another job that my aide does, is when that someone comes to the car, my aide is like, "Hey, come over here." He doesn't want to talk to you because I've got my headset on and I'm concentrated and I'm laser focused on the incident, and I don't want to be disturbed. And they all know that, and they give me a hard time about it, but that's okay.
But if you just let me go in there, I could solve the whole problem.
Exactly. Chief, we could do this. If you just let me do this, we'll get this taken care of for you. Yeah, exactly.
So I think the point I was really, I guess, trying to drive to, because we hear it so often all over the place with traffic, is engine 17 to command, no answer. The second time, there's a little bit more aggression, right? And the engine 17 to command, right? And then by the third time, it's almost like the company gave up. They're like, okay, what are they really doing, right? And I mean, they're losing confidence, right? The companies are losing confidence. And it's like, and like we talk about all the time, if you're the IC and you're missing that traffic, then you just missed the Mayday. Every time that happens, I tell people, you just missed the Mayday. And we all know, like it comes out one time. Oftentimes, right? I mean, oftentimes it comes out one time, and if you're not focused and doing active listening, you're going to miss it. So I mean, that's just a piece of it, right? And then the other side, what you talked about, somebody gets a little amped up, stoked up, talks fast, whatever. That just comes back to the training thing, I think, right? That you just have to have those conversations. They slow down, but some of us just don't have that. I mean, it's like,
I'm one of the few incident commanders in our organization that actually use a headset inside the vehicle. But it's not as much of a noise canceling thing for me, or is it just makes me pay attention. Mm-hmm. Having that headset on my head, it forces me to listen to the radio, where if I didn't have it, I think I would probably be more likely to like wander and talk to my aide, or if my support officer climbs in the back seat, I might be more apt to talk to him or her or whatever. But having that headset on my head, it forces me to focus on my listening. That's just me.
And that's our job. That's a huge part of our job as strategic ICs, is active listening, for sure. Yeah.
But I totally agree. You take that crew you were talking about, engine 17, if they have to call me 3 times and they can't get an answer, what are they thinking? They're thinking, well, if I have a Mayday, is he going to hear me?
Oh, yeah.
That's terrible. I would never want my folks to think that.
Mm-hmm. Battalion Chief Steve Lester, Cobb County, thank you so much for being on B Shifter today. We look forward to seeing you at the conference in Cincinnati, October 5th and 6th. You can still register, so the link to that is in our show notes. And I want to thank you, too, for not only sharing today and everything that you shared with B Shifter prior, but also all the audio. I mean, it's giving us some really good examples of application of Blue Card in a sensibly aggressive fire department where you guys are getting the job done, doing it very well, and just continuing to develop that with all of your people. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today and everything you've shared in the past. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Josh and John. I'm really appreciative for you guys having me on, and I'm just trying to leave it better than I found it, man. That's what it's all about. And if we can, whatever we can learn from, audio wise or video wise, helmet cams, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's how we're learning these days. Because, like I said, we're just not going to the fires that we used to go to, and so we have to share with others so that others can learn from our successes and our failures. So thanks for having me on. I look forward to seeing everybody in Cincinnati.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.
See you guys. Thank you.